Hello and welcome back to another video. If you're new to the channel, hello and welcome. In this video we're going to do pretty much a step-by-step guide on how to remove the valve cover on a BMW N57 engine. It's going to be the same as the I'll talk you through the tools needed to change this valve cover as we go through the process. I'm not going to list them right now, but if you watch the video, follow along. I'll talk you through what tools I'm using. I'd like to give a shout out to one of my new subscribers. They've requested a shout out, so I'd like to give a shout out to Daryl, or for the purposes of this video we're going to call him Big D. Alright mate, so that's one of my new subscribers. So without further ado, let's get on with this valve cover. The first thing I'm going to do is remove the cabin filter. Just 6 bolts and they're 8mm. 2 on the front here and 4 on the back. Mine's only held on by 3 bolts, but in general I think there's about 6 bolts you need to remove. So you can take the cabin filter off and then everything underneath. The 2 panels either side. The 2 panels either side just simply unclip and come away. One of them will reveal the brake master cylinder. Just simply pull this forward and remove the 2 8mm bolts, one either side, one here and one the opposite side, and disconnect the 2 wires. There's one here. This is for the bonnet sensor. It tells you if the bonnet is open or closed, and there is one the other side, and it just lifts away. Pull the engine cover up and forward, revealing the engine. There are 4 10mm bolts holding this bracket on with the wiring. There are 2 on top, as you can see here, and there are 2 on the sides. One of them is right back near the suspension tower, quite difficult to get to. And then just simply pull it away like this. I'm going to go for a 19mm open-ended spanner to loosen all of the injector lines. You don't need to remove them at this point, you just need to loosen them all off, both sides, so they have some play in them. I believe these are the fuel injector return lines. You just take a flat bladed screwdriver, push it into the top notch to unclip the top, the cap, and then push down like that, and then pull the injector off, or pry it off. I'll show you again. I'm just going to continue with the other 4 now. if you have the N47, then you only have 4 injectors, 4 cylinders, but in this case this is the N57, so we have the full 6 cylinders. Just going to remove these 3 10mm bolts that hold the wiring. And now the wires for the injectors, the injector electrical connections. Another fuel return line just simply pushes in with a flat screwdriver and pull it towards you or up. I'm now going to start unscrewing the fuel pipes from the injectors. This is one of the high pressure fuel feeds, which you will need to have to pry it out over the top unless you take off the intake and go that far. We're trying to avoid that, so we're just going to pry it up out of the way and hopefully we can slide the rocker cover out underneath. So just manipulate it around a little bit, and also it will help you undo the bolt that's there behind it. There are 2 fuel lines, the same as this, so one here and one up near injector 6. This is the second fuel line. Sorry, the one next to it. Underneath the wiring is the second fuel line in, which needs to be removed and pried over. So moving on to undoing the bolts that hold the injector clamps into place. This one was really tight. It shouldn't be that tight. I believe 26 Newton meters of torque. It's a female Torx bit sized 12 to remove these bolts. Going to remove the last one without removing the strut brace at this point, but we will have to remove the strut brace to get the injector out. Onto the fuel rail now, the clamps. There are 4 clamps, each held by 2 bolts, and to remove them you need an E-Torx female size 12 socket. Just remove the wiring, push the clip in, pull it back. Need to remove all the wiring near or around the valve cover that this clips on. Just lift it up, and there's a few at the back. Just pull them all off, it should be alright. I'm going to remove these 3 bolts now, which hold the wiring loom for the injectors. I used a 5mm socket, although they're not a 5mm socket, they're a Torx, but I don't have one small enough, but a 5mm works perfectly fine. So we're about ready to move this fuel rail, but you have to manipulate the wiring and the fuel pipes and the fuel lines around each other to pull it off. Even removing one of the injector pipes to allow you to move the wiring, and then you can pull the fuel rail off. Just going to pull out the wiring for the injectors now. Just grab hold of one end and it should slide straight out. And there is also a 10mm nut or bolt right on the corner of the valve cover that's holding some wiring, so you need to also remove that to free up the wiring. And don't worry about any of this wiring, it very easily finds its way all back into place, quite really easily. So you're not going to get confused where everything goes, it just falls back into place. So all I'm doing here is I'm going around the edge of the valve cover, just making sure that all the wires are attached, that there's nothing else that's going to prevent this rocker cover or valve cover from coming off. That's, just go around and check the front, the sides, the back, check everything. Make sure you've got everything you can. It's now time to remove the injectors. This is my homemade injector puller. It's I've created it out of a bearing puller or ball joint puller. So we'll screw it on. It's the same thread. And I moved on to injector number 2, managed to get this one out, and look at the corrosion. I mean, and it's really stuck. There's the end. I did get some penetrant on there, it has soaked down a little bit. I have to put some extra weight on. It's the next day now. I went and brought an injector puller, but it doesn't look like it's that good. So we'll pull the injectors out. And I did have to put the car all back together to go and buy the injector puller to use the car, and I drove it for around an hour with some penetrant. So far it's doing pretty good, this injector puller, no complaints. I mean, I did spray WD-40 on the top of the injectors and then drove the car for around an hour just to try and get it soaked down, make it a bit easier for them to slide out. That one was a lot tougher to get out. You can see where the penetrant has helped. It's come down slightly, not all the way down, but I think it's helped. I'm going to remove the engine brace now so we can get to injector number 6, final injector. This is quite tight and it's female Torx 14mm socket, 14 size Torx. Just remove the cover with a flat bladed screwdriver, turn it anti-clockwise, it just pops out, and I believe this is another female Torx. I think it's an 18, size 18, but I didn't have an 18, so I'm using a size 20, and this is really tight. Could have done with a breaker bar really. And you can see down on the left of the screen, all the injectors and everything is all in the order it came out, so it all goes back in the order. So you need to put the injectors back where they came from, in the correct cylinders. Once we remove this last injector, we can remove the valve cover. There's 3 rows of bolts. I'll show you those in a moment. I'm going to apologise for the camera shaking at the moment, but this injector is really seized in there. These are the bolts for the valve cover. They are female Torx, size 12, with 3 rows. 1 row going up there, 1 up the centre, and 1 row up the outside here. So you have to remove all of those. Put this back on. So as soon as that last injector is out, we can just undo those bolts, and that's it. We've got our rocker cover off, so we can replace the gaskets. So I'm using an air hammer here. This is really seized, so I'm going to keep going and see if we get it out or not. So I've been working this injector now for about 30 to 40 minutes, and it's just not budging. I don't think I'm going to be able to get it out on this attempt, so we have to come up with plan B. But essentially, you know everything there is on how to get this rocker cover off, valve cover off. Well, I didn't get the valve cover off, the rocker cover off, to replace that gasket, but I've provided enough information in the video for you to get that job done yourselves, provided you can get the injectors out. So if you can get the injectors out, unfortunately I failed to remove all 6, but I provided enough information in that video for you to get that job done. But hopefully we'll get another video out on actually replacing the gasket. But until then, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and see you again in another one.